one thing I would like to do in the company is to modernize it. And I think this capstone made me realize that that's actually a very possible thing to do. I mean, just throughout that semester, we were able to cut the time it takes to evaluate a helicopter from hours to minutes with the software that I coded through the semester. And trying to think of other ways that we can integrate that through, I think would be really impactful to the efficiency of the business, the accuracy, and hopefully the industry overall.
Hi, I'm Prof Bhatia. I'm professor of entrepreneurship at the NYU Stern School of Business, and I'm so pleased to have one of our first graduates from the Business, Tech, and Entrepreneurship program, Daniel Lok, joining me today to have a conversation about his entrepreneurial journey. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, no problem. Glad to be here. Yeah, it's been a fun couple years for sure.
Fantastic. Well, so it's funny, you started by saying it's been a fun couple of years. So the BTE program started 3 years ago. Mm-hmm. You're graduating early.
Yeah.
Tell us about this. How did we get there?
Yeah, so, originally I was planning on doing the full 4 years, of course, back when I was wanting to go into consulting or finance or something like that. But, once I launched my company, I kind of came to the realization that it was really rough to be running both at the same time. So it was either drop out or try and get it done faster. And luckily I was able to work with my advisor and managed to clean it all up in 3 years. So
yeah, well, that's no small feat because the business tech program requires you to have an emphasis on business, technology courses. That's basically equivalent of a minor in computer science, and then a whole core in entrepreneurship. So congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah.
Such a pleasure to have our first graduate, and you're my first recent student alumni interview as part of this channel and the interviews that I'm doing. So super excited. Let's kick off this interview with learning a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey. So you came here in the fall of 2021. Why did you choose this program, Business Tech and Entrepreneurship? What were you set out to do? And how did you become now a founder of the company that you are?
Yeah, so I chose the BTE program because really, since I was probably in middle school, I've been just trying to sell stuff. I remember growing up, my dad told me pretty much once I hit age 7 or 8, if I wanted to buy some clothes or probably at that point it was a Lego set or something, he was like, okay, here's some, papers for my company, let's shred that, I'll give you $5 a box. Or, he would have me write up a business plan for, some little venture that I wanted to do to make some money. And he would fund it and, I would go through that whole process. And as I got older, I was kind of glad that he did that because I had a bit more cash, and through COVID, I started reselling swimming pools, I was selling sneakers, I was selling all this sort of stuff just to try and make a little cash. And when I saw the BTE program, it was like, well, cool, I can actually learn a bit of foundation about this and figure out really how I should be doing this properly. And at the time I wasn't trying to launch my own company, I just wanted to sort of have that background knowledge so I knew what to do if I ever decided to. At that point, I still wanted to be a consultant, go and work my 80-hour weeks and, do that whole pipeline. But afterwards, I remember you and I had a conversation down in the plaza, and I was telling you how stressed I was about this whole consulting thing, and I was saying, well, my dad's in the helicopter business. What if I decided to start that instead? And at the end of it, I decided to launch the company. And I think it was probably about 5 days between that conversation and me actually chartering the LLC.
Wow.
Yeah, and at that point, it was just sort of constant movement, but yeah.
That sounds like some decisive action. So just rewinding a little bit so we can hear these sequences here. You picked BTE because you had this childhood filled with entrepreneurial endeavors. It sounds like your father was an entrepreneur as well, so you had that model there as well.
Yeah.
Very entrepreneurial. So when you joined the BTE program, I remember, one of the first things I remember about your experience, I asked all students to fill in a Google slide that would kind of have a picture of you and tell us a little bit about how you navigated through COVID and what's motivating you, what are you excited about? And you had one of the more unique ones, which was that you had taken apart a car or put the car back together. Can you tell me a bit about that, like very hands-on experience and how that relates to your journey?
Yeah. So during COVID, I got kind of tired of just constantly looking at a screen, just paper after paper, just sort of stuck at home. And, when I was younger, I used to work in my dad's repair shop, and I had a lot of fun just sort of tinkering with little things. Of course, nothing that went on an aircraft, but either way, actually being able to build something. And I wanted to sort of reconnect with that. So I bought this clapped out, $1,000 little 80s Japanese sports car, and it was absolutely destroyed. And I took the entire thing apart, restored everything, rebuilt the engine, all sort of watching YouTube tutorials along the way. And by the end of it, I actually had a pretty well-functioning car.
Wow.
And that really sort of inspired me as well to get back into the business, because I realized through that every day I wasn't looking forward to being on my laptop, putting together spreadsheets or whatever. I was looking forward to getting back outside and getting a job done, putting something together. And that's what I really love about the business that I'm in now, because I can see the helicopters that we work on. I can actually interact with them. I can see the actual progress that we make when we fix them. Mm-hmm. And I think it's just really rewarding to be able to get that physical sort of feedback from the work that I do.
Yeah.
It makes it feel more real.
So now we've talked a bit, you've mentioned helicopters and aviation and working with your hands, but we haven't really described exactly what you do and about your company. So can you tell us a bit about, the environment that you grew up in, I guess maybe your father's business, and like what now you're doing and charting out your own business?
Yeah, so my dad started 20-30 years ago building a little helicopter repair shop that tore apart helicopters, put them back together, bought and sold parts, and he ran that for 20 or 30 years, and he eventually retired, sold the business, but now I've decided to start an iteration of that. So instead of just buying and selling helicopter parts and occasionally building entire aircraft, what we do now is we have an inventory of helicopter parts that we lease out to different helicopter operators. And what that does is it allows those operators to really help their cash flow. Because if you think about these little companies, they have maybe 200, 300 grand in the bank, and all of a sudden they've got a helicopter that needs a $500,000-$600,000 engine, which just isn't feasible for them. It's only really possible for the big players to be buying from Airbus like that. So what we do is we say to them, okay, we have this engine and we'll lease it to you for $300-$400 an hour of flight. And what that allows them to do is be completely hands-off with their maintenance. Mm-hmm. We take care of that. When it needs to be replaced, we put a new part in, and they just stay in this program with us. And that makes it where they don't have these really lumpy $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 expenses that come up every couple of months.
Yeah.
Instead, they're able to predictably know what their expenses are going to be throughout the year. And that helps out a lot of smaller operators, and that's sort of our big value add at Rotor Parts Network.
Yeah, and so, it sounds like you're getting involved in the, why own when you can rent kind of philosophy that's driving a lot of business these days. Are there a lot of people in this, is that common in the aviation area?
No, it's really just us and the manufacturer at this point. And the manufacturer is very hostile when it comes to their rental policies.
Hostile?
Yeah. Well, they of course, they're in it to make as much money as possible. And they understand the same problem we understand, which is, of course, these parts are expensive. So they'll charge what would be, a prorated 200%
I see. So
of what the total price would be.
Predatory kind of lending rates to borrow the kind of equipment you need.
Yeah, exactly. And they charge them a fee at the end to get out of the program.
I see.
So for us, we're happy saying, okay, we're not Airbus. We don't need to make 100% profit on this. We'll make 30 or 40%. That helps you guys out, and that helps us out, being able to actually put these parts into service. And because of that, we've had a lot of interest in this rental program, because the only alternative is going to Airbus, where you're going to have to deal with this bureaucracy, you're going to have to deal with these incredibly high prices, slow response times. You email Rotor Parts Network, and you're emailing me directly, and I take control of it personally.
Wow, fantastic. So Rotor Part Network, and the business is lending out, is it leasing out?
Yeah, leasing,
engine components.
Yeah.
And it's mostly helicopters, or are we also dealing with planes?
No, we specialize in Airbus AS350 B2 helicopters, which is a really jumbled, helicopter name. But the important thing is that's a majority of the helicopters that are in the industry right now. That's our specialization.
And where are these helicopters? Like when you say in the industry, what type of helicopters? Like police helicopters? What type of helicopters are we talking about?
Yeah, they're used for a ton of things. They're used for police, they're used for forestry, they're used for high net worth individuals who just want to, hop back and forth between different hubs. They're used for tour companies. It's really a good general purpose people carrier, really.
Got it. Okay. And so is it the type of thing where it's like a subscription model that you have a set number of customers that are part of your business?
Yeah, it kind of works that way, but as well, they can choose what parts they want us to facilitate. So if they, want to handle their engine components, but they just really hate trying to find gearboxes and deal with that, then we say, okay, you can use your own engine, and then we'll charge you this amount for this part, this amount for this part, and wrap it all into one little program for them. And really, we rent out to as many people as we possibly can. There isn't really a cap to it. We're lucky enough to have a really large supply of vendors globally. So if someone decides that they want to rent 50 gearboxes from us, then we're able to sort of leverage those contacts to be able to say, okay, we need 50 gearboxes ASAP for this client, and we're able to get that done.
I didn't know that we'd be talking about gearboxes, but that makes a lot of sense as a business, that you have these very high expensive helicopters. Why not rent instead of buy? So that makes a lot of sense. I'd love to understand from you about your journey here. So you came here with the intention of, look, I'm interested in entrepreneurship. This program seems to kind of fit my goal. But I remember in our first year, as you mentioned before, you weren't convinced. There was a part of you, and you got part of the culture of a business school, started thinking about maybe consulting or banking. And tell me a little bit about that, like how you thought about this career journey.
Yeah. I think it's very easy in any business school to sort of fall into that pipeline of going into banking or consulting because all your friends are doing it. And I think it's sort of a point of camaraderie between friends. We're all going through this. It really sucks. It's a lot of hours, but we're all sort of in that same shared journey. And I think that was sort of a very comforting thing, especially for my first year in college. But the thing I realized, and honestly, our sort of first year class kind of helped me out a lot with this, was realizing that entrepreneurship wasn't that unapproachable. It's something that obviously you have to work on. Obviously, it's a lot of hours. Obviously, there's a lot of work that has to go into it beforehand. But compared to the pipeline of going into banking, it's no worse.
Yeah.
I think there isn't that support system as much. But I realized sort of after that first year that it was kind of a better option almost to go into this business, especially since I was lucky enough to have my dad as a mentor and to have a bit of funding behind me. I just sort of decided at that point that, okay, great, I'll have this as a backup plan, but let's just try this and see what happens. And I'm very glad I did.
Well, I'm glad that the first year helped you with that. And I want to ask you a little bit more about something you said there, because, I think one of the things that you're talking about, and this is something that I've found in my own research. So one of the challenges that entrepreneurs face is that it's a very lonely pathway, and it's that exact thing, that camaraderie that you have. You're going into consulting or banking, there's so many other people that are with you in that journey.
Yeah.
And I saw you on this journey in dealing with helicopters of all things, right? It's not like you had a tech startup, some sort of app that your friends could get, they could hold in touch.
Yeah.
Your product is not something that we can even engage with.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that. I remember maybe it was like your sophomore, your junior year, you're flying around the world. Mm-hmm. You must have felt a little out of sync with your classmates.
Yeah, definitely. I think, and that sort of continues to be a challenge. With my friends, we all still talk about finance. Oh yeah, I'm selling this helicopter over here, and it really kind of sticks out a bit. But, I'm lucky enough where the aviation industry is very sort of close-knit. I think it comes from the fact that everyone's worried about safety, so people buy from who they trust, and they form these sort of relationships very quickly with people who give them good quality service. So luckily I have a lot of friends in the industry now, where we can sort of chat about, Airbus is doing this BS, Bell's doing this over here. But yeah, it's definitely it always turns into a weird conversation whenever I'm, reconnecting with friends, and it's, oh, what are you doing this summer? Oh yeah, I'm, interning at, Goldman or whatever. What are you doing? Oh, I'm probably going to be in Canada getting my, maintenance license for helicopters.
Is that what you're going to do this summer?
Yeah, that's the plan,
All right.
And it really kind of stands out of it for sure, yeah.
Okay. But was there something that kept you going on that journey, even though it was so different and out of line with your classmates?
I think honestly it was seeing what my classmates was going through that kind of kept me going, especially in late sophomore year, early junior year, where they're going through recruiting, and that's months and months of hell. And at the end of it, you might not even get a job. And I was looking at that and thinking, okay, well, the company isn't going exactly how I wanted to right now. It's still very much in the early stages. But here's the alternative. And that really motivated me to make this work, because the deeper I saw my friends go into this stuff, the more I realized it really was not for me. Mm-hmm. And that really kind of motivated me to make this work as well as I can.
Yeah, wow. The other question I have for you is about navigating ambiguity and uncertainty. How do you feel about doing that, right? You're creating a new pathway for selling engine parts, renting engine parts that has not been done largely before. You're kind of making this thing up,
Yeah.
How do you feel about that? How do you navigate with dealing with uncertainty and ambiguity?
Yeah, I mean, it's scary. It really is. Especially in helicopters, we're putting hundreds of thousands of dollars out that I don't know if it'll work or not. And I think with every deal that goes through, I sort of get more and more confident that the idea is going to work. But especially in the early days, it was frightening. And I had to do everything I could to not try and micromanage it and to try and, trust my employees to do what they know how to do. Trust the process, trust the research that I did in the market, trust that I know that this is something that's in demand. And understand that, look, I'm 21. If this doesn't work, I'm not, I don't have kids that, are waiting for dinner to be put on the table. I don't have a wife. I don't have that sort of family that I need to support. Absolute worst case, I'm young enough to bounce back. Even now that I'm graduating, it's like, wow, okay, what's my day-to-day going to be? How am I going to grow this? 20 or 30 years, am I still going to be doing this? Am I going to be, in something totally different? And it's definitely a weird thing to kind of think about. It's the first time in my life that 5 years from now, I have no idea where I'm going to be.
Wow. Yeah. So where are you going to be at first? We won't ask you about 5 years. You've already told us that. But what is the first, few months of your future life look like?
Yeah, I think the big plan is first going to be going out and visiting all the vendors and clients. As my dad was starting to get older, he didn't feel like, traveling all the way to New Zealand, being on a plane for that long. And I feel like the first goal is going to be really getting personal with a lot of these vendors and customers. I think that was his competitive advantage, and that's something that I need to try and break through. Because, they look me up, 21, just graduated university. What do I know about helicopters? I didn't go to technical college. So I think going out into the actual field and meeting all these people, looking at their workshops, helping them out, figure out some problems that they're having with something that's on the workshop floor at that point. I think doing that for a couple of months is going to be critical. Because even I've realized after I've gone to Canada and I've gone to Switzerland to meet these people, those are my best customers now. Those are the people who, every time they need something, they come to me first. And it's because we have that sort of relationship now.
Yeah.
So that's really the first priority, I think.
Wow, that's great. So one question that I often ask everyone that I interview, is what advice do you have? And now this is advice from one of our first graduating business tech and entrepreneurship students to a first year business tech and entrepreneurship student. Like, if they are feeling that pressure of kind of what kind of career environments around them, but maybe also considering entrepreneurship, how would you tell them to think about it?
I think the main thing to remember is trust the process. It's really easy in your freshman year to be overwhelmed by all the things that are going on, by all the things you don't know, by all the things you feel like you have to learn. But you're here for 4 years, or I guess 3 years for a reason, and it's because you learn as you go. And especially for BTE, it's really kind of overwhelming to say, okay, here's an alternative idea to finance. Here's something you weren't planning on thinking about. And I feel like a lot of people get kind of scared in the first year or two away from entrepreneurship, and sort of they want to go into the safety net of finance. But I think the thing to remember is we're all young, we all have time. Go into finance if it makes you comfortable, but keep this in mind and trust that what you're learning here is actually applicable to the real world, and there is an alternative option that I think a lot of people don't take the time to really consider and to mull over.
That's great. Yeah, that's good advice. All right, now I want to have a little fun here in terms of just going back down memory lane and ask you to remember some of your experiences here at BTE. And there's this picture of you in a tutu. And for the benefits of our audience, you're wearing it because we were trying to get you to think divergently. And we brought these props in the classroom. Do you remember that experience? And of course, we're also wearing masks. This is the fall of 2021.
Yeah, I remember it pretty well, and got this little goodie bag full of a whole ton of different things, and I saw the tutu, and I was like, oh, what am I gonna do with this? I can't really connect with this. It's kind of weird. So I was like, no, screw it. I'm gonna put it on. I'm gonna see what it feels like. And I think sort of while it was kind of silly, it also really kind of helped weirdly the kind of ideation process, because everyone was like, oh, all right, we're just we're kind of messing around here. We can throw out ideas, well, let's just see what sticks. And yeah.
That's great.
That's sort of my first big memory in BTE, to be honest, yeah.
That's great. And what do you think about coming out of COVID, coming into college? When we had masks on for the whole year. Do you remember that? Do you remember what that transition was like, coming out of high school, going into college?
Yeah, it was sort of sensory overload, to be honest. Especially because, we were very cautious about COVID. I didn't really go out and hang out with friends in high school. We kind of stayed in our little bubble. And then coming to a different city, meeting a whole ton of new people, being in all these different classes, it was just so much all at once. And I found it really exciting. But I was also glad, when finally COVID started to calm down and, people stopped wearing masks. It was sort of like I was reconnecting with all these people for a second time, because it's a very, very different personal experience for sure.
Yeah, no, I mean, it felt like a thaw that was,
like
we were all frozen and we got out of this thaw. And I remember I constantly tried to do outdoor events so that we could see each other at some frequency. I don't know if you came to one of my lunches, and we had lunch at down on
Yeah, I remember we did,
Yeah. So thinking back to BT also, any memories, what are some memories that you have that kind of you'll leave the school with?
Yeah, I think my best memory was definitely, all the design sprints. I think those were really impactful to, not just how I think about entrepreneurship, not how I think about the process, but also the friendships I made in the program. I think there's just something to, being stuck with a group of people, having to solve this really complex problem, and you don't really stop until you're done, that really kind of forms friendships that don't go away very easily. And a lot of my sort of closest friends in the program came from that. And I think it was just a really unique thing to do. You don't do something like that in other classes. You don't really make things in other classes. And I think it was a lot of fun to kind of get out of the classroom, get into a different space, get into a different mindset, and walk out having actually built something, somewhat solved a problem, and really have a cohesive team that you did it with. I think that was a lot of fun. Yeah.
That's great. So far away, we've talked about technology. We're talking about it, mechanical technology, helicopters. But this last semester, you worked on a capstone project that was software technology.
Yeah.
And you have taken a number of software related courses. Tell me about how the different aspects of tech, how you identify with the technology skills that you've developed and you think of yourself as a person in tech.
Yeah, I think the capstone definitely unlocked something for me for sure, because it's very different to do a programming assignment versus actually code something that's relevant to what I want to do in my future. And I think it also made me realize something about the helicopter industry, which is we're all very analog. We all work on still hard copy paperwork, software from like 2008. And one thing I would like to do in the company is to modernize it. And I think this capstone made me realize that that's actually a very possible thing to do. I mean, just throughout that semester, we were able to cut the time it takes to evaluate a helicopter from hours to minutes with the software that I coded through the semester. And trying to think of other ways that we can integrate that through, I think would be really impactful to the efficiency of the business, the accuracy, and hopefully the industry overall.
Wow. Yeah, no, it's really impressive. And I loved seeing your iterations week by week in the capstone, trying to get computer vision to work and having that fail, and then moving to some manual process, but then having challenges there, and ultimately having a product that, as you say, is delivering real value to your business. Amazing result. So I'm always curious about what motivates people. And so I'm curious for you, like, as you think about what motivates you in this business, what drives you and what gives you purpose?
Yeah, so, growing up in the industry, I would constantly hear about crashes that happened and people died, people were injured, and all of these horrible things that happened because of helicopters. So at Rotor Parts Network, my goal and the thing that drives me is to ensure that every part that comes out of our warehouse is the absolute top quality of safety and compliance with FAA. If there's ever a part that is maybe questionable whether it's airworthy or not, we simply scrap it, and that's it. The thing that drives me most is that I want to ensure that every part that comes out of our warehouse is something that I would be comfortable being installed on a helicopter that my mum and dad was going to fly in. And that is the utmost value of the business.
Yeah, wow, well, that's incredible. I mean, I know that at one point I was kind of a nervous flyer. I've gotten much more comfortable with taking tons of flights. But to know that the emphasis is on safety, that's such a great goal, right? Because we all want to go somewhere. We want to have these experiences that aircraft allow us to do.
Exactly.
But we need the safety.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of people who, I know a lot of people who don't want to go on a helicopter, who miss out on so many different experiences because they hear about these crashes in the news and they hear about all these things happening. And I want to make sure that I'm doing my part in the industry to make sure that I'm not contributing to any of these events, and that all of the fleets that I sell parts to are going to not create any incidents. And I can assure people that, all the parts that we sell in all of these helicopters, they are safe and they will get you to where you need to go, and they are maintained perfectly.
That's great. Well, that's fantastic. So Daniel, it's been such a pleasure to have you in the program. Only regret that I have is that you're graduating a year early. Could have used you for one more year in the program around as part of our community. Been very inspiring to see this journey with Rotor Parts Network. Really excited to see where you take this and how your entrepreneurial journey unfolds. So maybe come back in a few years. We can do another one of these chats. But thank you so much for being one of our first graduates of the BTE program and for sitting down with me today to chat.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
All right. Thank you.